Welcome to the first DJ Shan Azure Remixed show. I'm joined today with Matt Davis, who is a principal cloud solution architect within the manufacturing vertical at Microsoft. I've known Matt now for a few years. I think it's a little over 3, and it feels like it's longer some days, but I also feel like that's just life at Microsoft. Last year, he had an interesting proposition hit his plate where he was able to showcase some really cool features of Azure to a customer and getting them to kind of solve a problem of theirs. Once he talked about the features he used, the services he turned on, and the POC he went through, I was really excited to showcase his work. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to Matt so he can run through what his role is like and provide an overview of the problem at hand, plus all of the steps he took so he could make this a reality for the customer. So hi, Matt.
Hello. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Doing great. As Shannon said, I'm Matt Davis. I'm a principal cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and my role here is primarily to make sure customers are successful at adopting Azure. So that can be everything from helping out with, the initial setup, so scaffold and governance, all the way through, developer assistance, setting up services, and walking through kind of cloud native application development patterns and practices. I'm in the manufacturing vertical, which means I cover a lot of companies that create various pieces of equipment and machinery, as well as, crops and things like that. So nice to see you, Shannon. It's a beautiful Friday, isn't it?
I know it is, and it's been so long since we've been able to see one another. Hopefully one of these days we'll be able to rectify that. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I'm beginning to get a little bit worried that I'm not going to be able to recognize anyone once they're three-dimensional. I'm so used to looking at these like completely flat people now.
Right.
So this was a really interesting and really cool use case. So I was working with one of my customers, and I kind of like to walk through what we initially whiteboarded and, where we kind of went from, the initial problem statement to, how we proved it out in Azure, as well as some of the things I did to prove it out ahead of time so that when I worked with the customer, they were able to kind of walk through something that I already knew how to do in fairly good detail. So Shannon, if you could kind of put a spotlight on my desktop.
Sure.
Thank you. So this was actually a packing and shipping problem. So in this case, the customer had a issue with boxes and filling boxes. So they had basically a process where they would take a series of boxes and they would fill them up. So ideally, the boxes would be full. But what they found was that there were, significant boxes that were either, half full or, practically empty. And I think we've all probably received those orders when we go online, we order something and we order like a USB key and it comes in a 3 foot by 6 foot box. And we're like, what the heck? So it was very similar to that. And I was kind of, interested in what we could do here because we had some challenges around logistics, equipment that they had, and they were really looking for a cheap and easy way of proving out whether or not this was something they could conceivably do on the edge. So in working with a couple of my IoT global black belts, brilliant people like Joey Lorick and Courtney Benson, we came up with basically a pretty nice solution that was really easy to set up using the custom vision service.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah, when we kind of took a look at it, this really is a categorization problem where they wanted to take 3 things and basically tell the difference between 3 different categories and alert if something was empty or practically empty. So what we kind of did was we looked at, what could we do to prove this out in a way that didn't require access to any actual pictures of boxes. Because while we knew that we would have pictures of boxes that were meeting these 3 categories when we were working with the customer, we needed to figure out how kind of the pieces work together ahead of time. So I took a look at it and I'm like, well, really, we just need to be able to kind of draw something similar that we can detect vision-wise between 3 things. So I settled on a dog, a hot dog, or neither. So kind of the next step here was, I procured some photos of dogs, of hot dogs, and of things that were neither dog nor hot dog. Things like, cats, kimchi, other types of food. And started to look at customvision.ai as a way of being able to build this machine learning model with absolutely no intelligence around how to actually build machine learning models. this was the first time I'd done it, and I was amazed at how easy it was to do. Would you like to see it, Shannon?
I would love to see it.
So let me walk you through kind of the process of building this out in the portal.
Okay.
So if you navigate to customvision.ai, it'll prompt you to log in. So you log in and it'll bring you up to this project screen. So, you can see the one that I've already built out called, classify food or pets. But really, I'm going to walk you through the process of creating a new one and actually training it to detect whether or not something's a dog or a hot dog. So you click on new project.
I would say you had no prior experience doing any of this, right? You were kind of just stitching it together, taking a look at the docs, right?
Well, I did know what hot dogs tasted like, and I did know what dogs looked like. But when it came to actually training a computer to tell the difference, no, zero knowledge.
Very cool. Okay.
Up until last year, I thought R was something that you had to deal with on National Talk Like a Pirate Day. So you want to talk about, I was starting off at the ground floor.
Very cool.
So I pre-created a machine learning resource out there. The portal will walk you through it.
Nice.
Fantastic hot dogs. So you give the project name, Fantastic Hot Dogs. So for this one, we are looking to classify it.
Okay.
And we're looking for a multi-class. So we have a single tag per image. So if you think back to our whiteboard, you're either a dog or a hot dog, or you're either full or half full or empty. So we're not looking for things that are combinations of dogs and hot dogs to trigger both of these classifications. We're strictly trying to slot images into one of three categories. So for that, I select, multi-class. And with this one, I am going to go with the general domain. We do have some targeted ones towards food and landmarks, but since I am trying to differentiate between both a dog, which is not food, and a hot dog, which is, I'm going to stick with general.
Okay.
So you click create a project and you just let it kind of spin for a little bit. So this is the project. It'll immediately point out that I don't have any images. So let's fix that pretty quickly. So you click on add images. And then I'm going to drill into demo, and we'll start with dogs. Do you want to start with dogs?
Sure, let's start with dogs. It's a lot of dogs.
Let's start with dogs. So I'm going to highlight however many dogs that is. Click open. And it's going to show me kind of the previews of the images and ask me to tag them. So I will tag this dogs. And I will be uploading 84 files. So doesn't take too long. These aren't super high resolution dog photos.
It's more so the idea of giving it enough data to be able to make that machine learning model, correct?
Yeah, so the things I did find out during this process is, number one, there needs to be enough data that allows you to classify what you're trying to classify. The second piece was that you need to have enough data that each bucket is approximately the same.
Okay.
So since I'm not uploading all of the images because of the amount of time that would take,
sure,
if I have a image volume mismatch where, let's say, I upload 85 pictures of dogs and 160 pictures of cats and then 300 pictures of neither, it's going to flag that as being out of balance, which can impact the fidelity of the ML model.
Okay.
So right now I've got pictures of dogs. Let's add some of things that aren't dogs. So on this one, I'm going to go into non-dogs, and you'll see a combination of food up top and cats down below.
Okay.
So let me grab some French fries and some enchiladas and some cats.
As you
open here. And then for this one, since this is neither dog nor hot dog, we use the negative tag, which just says this is none of the things that we're actually trying to align to. And really, I picked that mostly due to the fact that we are looking for three classifications. So this is more proving out the concept of vision recognition rather than actually building a model.
Okay.
That would be useful in a business context.
Sure.
So I will go back here, and we've got negative there. I think my previous one was 68 files, and this is going to be 60 files. So that's a pretty good combination. Yep, 1684. So I might get that little warning when I actually go to train it. But now if you'll see, I have 2 tags over here, and I can say, show me all of the negative tags, as well as show me all the dog tags.
Very cool.
So from here, I need to add some additional images. So let me bounce back to Explorer. And then I have pictures of hot dogs, lots of hot dogs.
Those are good looking hot dogs.
Well, you know, the one thing I did notice was all hot dogs do look the same in that they all look really good to eat.
They do.
So you'll see on this one, I have 192, and that is going to take a little bit longer than I want to upload. So I'm going to just kind of scope that down real quick. When you're doing this, you know, quote unquote for real, the more images you have, the better your model's going to be trained. So
I was just going to ask something along those lines. So there's no limit, right? You could give it thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures, correct?
I believe so. On my last one, I think I did approximately 250 to 500 images of each category.
Okay. I'm assuming all that does is it adds levels of accuracy.
Yes, absolutely. So you'll see here, I've got a little red dot next to the untagged piece, which means I obviously forgot to tag the hot dogs as I uploaded them.
Got it.
Luckily, that's not too hard to resolve. So I'll go ahead and click untagged, which will show me all of the images that have been uploaded but not tagged. I am going to select all of them, tag images, and then type in hot dog here.
Okay.
And that's going to go through and tag all of those as hot dog, even though I forgot to tag them when I was uploaded. So if I click here, you'll see I've got negative images, dogs, and hot dogs.
Okay.
Isn't that fancy?
That is. And very, very minimal effort, I think.
Oh, yeah. So once you're at this point, the next step to kind of do from the custom vision model is to train it.
Okay.
So you click train here, and it's going to ask you if you want to do quick training or advanced training. Advanced training takes longer, does a better job, costs more money. But for what we're looking to do, we're going to use quick training, and quick training still takes several minutes. So we'll flip over to an already trained model after I kind of walk through this process.
Okay.
So I'm going to click train here, and you will see that it is now training, and it'll periodically update and check on the status of the training.
So when it's done, it also gives you some sort of notice here that it's finished and you're able to kind of take a look at the model, right?
It does.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
So from here, and I'll keep this open and we can check it later to see what that screen looks like. So if I go back here, you'll see I have Shantastic hot dogs and classify food or pets. So once the model's trained, and this is the model I said before where I use more images, you'll see I have about 250 images of hot dogs, dogs, and about 500 for neither. So pretty well balanced ML model. You can click this little button up here called Quick Test to do quick testing to see if it's doing what you expect it to do from a recognition perspective.
Okay.
So if I click Browse Local Files, I can then go into Test, and I'll specify this beautiful hot dog. And you'll see 99.9% probability that this is a hot dog. So this is a really good way without actually having to go through calling a REST interface or setting up any of the surrounding technology to just check whether or not a vision model is giving you the results you want.
Sure.
So if I click back here, let me highlight a dog. And again, dog, 99.9% chance that this is a dog. Very cool. And I'll do a couple more just to kind of prove that there is no person behind the curtain. Let's upload some guacamole. And it's neither with a 99.7% probability.
Very cool.
And then if I upload a cat, again, 99% chance that that's a cat and not a dog.
Very
So
cool. And
pretty cool considering I didn't know what I was doing.
Right. And you didn't have to sit around and figure out Python or R. It's all kind of baked in. It's ready to go.
So taking a look at these numbers, I thought it was interesting. And I'm like, well, let's try to really trip up the custom vision algorithm.
I'm with you.
So let's upload a photo of a dog dressed like a hot dog.
Oh, wow.
91% chance it's a dog. I mean, it is detecting that there is a chance it's a hot dog, but it's pretty sure that this dog's a dog.
That's hilarious, even when you try and trick it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've tried this multiple times. I mean, hours of work time spent uploading pictures of dogs dressed like hot dogs.
I do like the percentage chance of it being a hot dog, though, too. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's demos like this where I really have kind of learned to relish the process of demoing things for customers.
Nice dad joke.
Yeah. You didn't laugh right away. I think it took you a little bit of time.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to laugh right, and then I'm like, you know what? This is going to be good for the blooper reel. It's fine.
Blooper reel. This is prime time. So, model, very accurate, does a really good job of even detecting some of these corner cases. So from this process, we understood how to train the model, we understood how to publish the model, and we could do some testing. So we met with the customer and walked the customer through kind of setting this up in their environment with photos of the actual pictures of boxes. And we proved out that, within 80 to 85% probability chance, we could identify how full a box was.
Okay.
But of course, that wasn't enough. So that's kind of what's always interesting about these projects is you kind of only get line of sight to the first thing that you're trying to solve for. And in this case, it was this classification between the three types of boxes. But when you talk to business users, when you try to go get actual funding for something like this, that isn't good enough.
Okay.
So what we really needed to do was take this and operationalize it in some fashion. So instead of just detecting whether or not it fit into one of three categories, what they really wanted to do was take these three categories, take a look at it, and depending on what probability it fell into, they wanted to be able to take this and operationally push it to either a Teams channel or email or another mechanism to actually embed it into their operational flow.
Okay.
And, we get to this point, I'm like, well, last week I didn't even know how to train a custom vision ML model. How am I going to figure out all this?
Right.
And, fortunately, a tool that I hadn't had a ton of experience with thus far came to my rescue, and that was Logic Apps.
Okay.
So are you familiar with Logic Apps, Shannon?
I am, but I'm not as deep as you probably have become because of everything you've done for this customer. But I know what it functionally does, but it's always been on my docket to go as deep as possible. So maybe you'll be the impetus for me to kind of go down that path.
So Logic Apps is super cool, in my humble opinion. So what Logic Apps allows you to do is set up in a visual way an application that ties together a bunch of different services.
Okay.
So if you go into the Azure portal and create a new Logic App, you get this Logic App Designer. And what this allows you to do is very easily integrate it against other systems.
Okay.
So,
and visually.
So in this example, what we were really looking at is, okay, so we know we can classify the images into 3 categories.
Okay.
We know that we can set up cameras through, either using phones or mobile devices or even, network attached cameras. We know that we can get the images from the customer site into something like blob storage.
Sure.
So how do we drive it from there? Automatically, once it's uploaded to blob storage, kind of federate this process end to end to alert them via Teams or through email.
Okay.
So that's where we started using Logic Apps. And prior to this, I really hadn't done much with Logic Apps either. At the time, I think I'd looked at it to do some power operations on my lab environment, but that's about it.
Okay.
So I was pretty surprised and amazed at how flexible and powerful it was, especially considering I can't really spell JSON. I don't know who JSON is.
I don't either. We should find him.
And I mean, you take a look at it, I would assume that, things like sending an email or integrating against Microsoft Teams, that sounds hard. That sounds like something that's going to take some person who has experience programming, hours to do. And what this actually allows you to do is, as you set it up in Logic Apps, you create these connectors where you provide some credentials, and it'll handle all of that for you.
Wow.
So yeah, in this model, basically what we were looking to was the first thing you do is you set up a trigger. So in this case, we wanted whenever a blob was added or modified in a specific blob container, we want to do something with it. So in this case, we initialize a couple of variables that we can refer to the image, as well as determine what the probability was. And then we call a custom vision module, just called custom vision, actually. And we pass it what the URL to the image was. And it knows through this project ID and through this published name what our ML model is that we created over in the custom vision portal.
Wow. That seems pretty powerful, given the fact that all you had to do was fill in a couple of fields.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing is all of these web services talk JSON. And while I was joking a little bit, JSON is kind of a pain to parse. So,
but you didn't parse it, though.
No, I didn't. Logic Apps did it.
Thanks, Logic Apps.
Yeah, thanks, Logic Apps. There's a parse JSON command where all you have to do is click on this link and paste in what the JSON looks like, and it'll figure out what the schema is.
Oh, wow.
So in this case, I set up a for loop because you get back a prediction for each of the 3 categories. Parses the JSON, and then it basically picks out which ones were greater than the probability that we were looking for, so 80%. And then it'll, set the variable to what that prediction is as the tag name. As well as what the probability was. And then it will send an email, as well as posting a message to Microsoft Teams into a channel that I created.
Oh, wow. So did they ask for more, or was it just mostly email and Teams? Which one be alerted when this process runs?
So that's a really great question. So this was very preliminary proof of concept. So this wasn't with confidential data. This was with considered, open data.
Sure.
We were more trying to prove that the technology worked and that the business process could be built around it. So when you think about this, you'll see that for both Teams and for email, we're connected using my personal ID. So there are things that we did here just because it was a POC to show the customer that it was possible and how to configure it, and to get funding for a further project to actually do this in a way that's repeatable, scalable, and secure.
Okay. I'm with you. And that's largely what your role becomes. You have to kind of help a customer develop some sort of architecture, show them how it works, and get them comfortable with moving forward, correct?
Yeah, and then, kind of define this is what the POC looks like. This is the constraints with the POC. When we go forward, this is how we're going to make the POC more bulletproof, more secure, more stable with the appropriate logging, things like that. So it's an iterative process where you really kind of start with, the business requirements up front, as well as, building this roadmap towards both proving the value to the business to get funding, as well as deploying in a way that's repeatable and sustainable.
Very cool. Okay. All right.
So do you want to see it in action?
I would love to.
So would I. Let's hope it works. So from here, I'm going to launch Azure Storage Explorer, which is a nice client-side utility for doing various things with Azure Storage. But in this case, we're just going to use it to upload a couple files to that blob container that's, being listened to by the Logic app.
Okay.
So these are all the current images up there. So I did run through this a few times to make sure it works. And I'm going to click over to my demo test folder and just drag and drop one of the hot dog pictures into the UI. And you'll see the transfer starts down here. And 3 seconds later, it's there.
Cool.
And from there, we hope it works.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So if I go over into here into the Teams channel, there is nothing here.
Something
So I'm not
chat.
Yeah, I'm not really freaking out because Logic Apps does run every couple seconds or every, multiple times a minute, but it's not instantaneously.
There you go. Look at that.
There you go.
Look at that. And we were worried it didn't work. It worked.
Yes. So in this case, you'll see 99% probability this is a hot dog. And then if I flip over to Outlook, you'll see the image there.
Oh, and it shows it in the subject.
Yes.
So probability. Okay, cool.
And I could do that either way. I could show it in the body. I could make the body look a lot nicer. But this was kind of what I defined as minimal acceptable product.
Sure. Could you also put like email text in there, like an actual email body?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So if I go over here and go into Logic Apps, so let me, first of all, because I think this is totally cool, you'll see I've got successful runs, and you'll see this is the one that we just ran. I can click into this run and see the status of the flows.
Oh, so that's really helpful with troubleshooting.
Right. So as an example, when I needed to classify that JSON, I could just expand classify an image URL and click show raw outputs. And it gave me the exact JSON that I could paste into that one window to get the schema.
Very cool. That's probably really helpful, especially given the fact that you didn't have any experience doing this prior to going down this path.
Right. And I mean, you can see that, early on there were a lot of failed runs. And again, you'll also notice I built this very incrementally. So, try a few things, get it working through classify an image URL. And then, once that works, move ahead and try to do more things with it.
So is that kind of your recommendation? Just moving through it iteratively, making sure that you always get a green check mark?
Yes, that's what I found the most valuable, because then not only do you have the green check mark, but you can go back to your last successful run and always see what the output of the previous command was.
Okay.
So if I go back into here and go back into my Logic App Designer, in this case, if I pop open, post a message, you'll see I've got the var prediction and var probability. You can actually pretty much type anything you want into the text box here. So you can type things like hello world or anything else if you want to customize it. In this case, what we had done as part of the MVP was we had included a phone number of a person to call. So this box was only half full, or this box was empty. Call this phone number to discuss, what needs to be done in the future to prevent this from happening again.
Gotcha. Interesting. I like that. So there's a lot of flexibility baked into the Logic App Designer. And I also noticed something over here too, that code view. Is that the underlying code that is being built as you're building your Logic App, app? Your Logic App app? Your Logic App? Your Logic App.
Yeah, so the Logic App is stored basically as a giant JSON file.
Okay.
So within this, you'll see kind of each step as well as what the values were. The one thing I did find useful for the JSON view, and I did do a little bit of editing code, because when I was creating the body for the Teams message and for the email message, I found it was a little bit difficult to get the actual embedding of the image into the message body.
Ah,
So I kind of cheated and peeked at the JSON and added this in here from a HTML perspective, because I did know enough to set up a image source tag in HTML. So the code view is here. They have recently made a lot of enhancements around code only designing. I know that there are VS Code plugins. I know that there are ways of storing these into repos, just not things that I'm totally comfortable with or have had to do yet.
Sure. Okay. Very cool. So I wanted to call it out because it looks like you can do either, which even makes that more flexible, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing that's really nice is that you can use this to call Azure functions.
Oh,
So kind of the way I saw this was, if you've got this use case where you have, I'll just call them citizen developers who need to do a certain amount of business logic, but
sure.
they need to call back-end systems internal to your company. The ability to integrate against Azure functions allows them to call, quote unquote, serverless functions that other people have written on their behalf.
Wow. Okay.
So when I was working with Joey Lorick on this, actually, I made some comment about, I wish there was something like a dictionary or the ability to do lookup tables in here, because it'd be much easier. And he made the comment, well, you can just integrate against an Azure function. It's pretty easy. And sure enough, it is pretty easy. But, for kind of the use case I was driving towards, which is a lot more of the citizen developer, it was a little bit, daunting to think that for things like that, you might need to call a function. So really, I was focusing on, how much can I do solely within the Logic App Visual Designer with a little bit of the code view.
Sure. Very cool. That was pretty cool, Matt. So I think, going through all of that, not really being a developer, your background is very infrastructure, middleware focused, right? Making sure that these applications are online. What are some of the ways that you have used Logic Apps and maybe the Custom Vision API since? Because I feel like this would be the start of bringing this into more solutions, or more, maybe just getting more familiar with how all of it works together.
So there's a couple things. I did mention kind of at the beginning that I'd used Logic Apps for doing some power maintenance on my VM environment. I doubled down on that and really started automating a lot of the Azure automation scripts that I was running through traditional means and porting those over to Logic Apps, mostly because I really liked the Teams integration, because I can log in the morning and have basically a channel that tells me, hey, my nested virtualization lab powered down. Hey, my domain controller powered down. Everything powered back up. So I can kind of see, as my automation's running, what the progress is and what's been done most recently just by checking a Teams channel. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Kind of the other thing is when you start talking about custom vision specifically, vision recognition's always been one of those things I feel like people are scared of. I mean, I know I was. And it's been really effective and really interesting to start showing kind of, the hot dog demo, for lack of a better term, to other customers who are looking at similar problems. Because when you think about logistics and shipping and, plants and manufacturing, there's a lot of use cases for vision that I think that customers don't necessarily think of at the very beginning, simply because it sounds hard. And really, as we showed, depending on what the use case is, it's not that hard. Kind of the last part is and I haven't done it yet, but in case you were wondering what the next iteration of is it a hot dog or a dog is, you can actually buy smart cameras that allow you to run custom vision ML models on the camera itself.
Oh, so like edge case scenarios that might not necessarily have direct connectivity to Azure.
So think about it this way. Let's say you're at a hot dog stand in Pekin, Illinois, a town I'm from, and there's bad internet connectivity, and you don't want to upload a HD image of a hot dog. So what these edge computing cameras would allow you to do is take a picture of the hot dog locally. It would figure it out locally whether or not it's a hot dog or not, and it would only send the probability back up to Azure.
Oh, so just the metadata then,
Yeah.
not the actual images. That's actually pretty cool. So I bet you that comes in handy with your manufacturing customers because of the fact that and I'm not really in that space, but I have worked with a couple of manufacturing customers. They've got sites all over and they're remote sites with not so great connectivity. So I bet you that would be a really awesome use case. Have you implemented it yet? No?
Not yet, but if anyone's watching this and thinks it sounds cool and wants to, take a whack at it, definitely hit me up. You've got my Twitter ID, and I'm sure, you know, lots of ways to reach me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so I will post this. I will post information on how to connect with Matt. Matt's very active on Twitter. He's also very active on LinkedIn. And thanks for being my first guest. It's a kind of a fun realm for me to travel off into. So I hope everybody found this really interesting. If you want to follow up, both of us are available. Matt's going to be the expert here. I will just send you to Matt. And honestly, Matt, I feel like if I go down this path, you're going to be the first one I call. So be prepared.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we'll have some more to share. Or I will. I'll have some more to share as time unfolds. So thanks.
Thanks.